Hello mech fans and welcome to the Valhalla Club. Grab a Fusionaire and join us as we talk Battletech and the latest happenings around the Colorado Battletech community.
Alright folks, welcome to the Valhalla Club. I'll be your bartender tonight, BourBen. With me tonight is also Dave Cerberus.
Well, hello.
Mike the Viking.
Howdy, howdy.
Matt the Northman.
Whoop whoop.
And John, Caveman.
Woo! Caveman.
We'll talk about that later. Let's get into what we've been doing. What's our hobby progress been this month since the last time we all got together? Mike, where you at? You're always the slacker.
I actually did work this time last night. It was the only work I've done all month. But more work on the Kellhounds. I worked on all the overspray for the red, made the bottom half black again, and I'm getting ready to null oil them all, and it's like 30 some minis all in Kellhounds. But I'm making progress.
A lot of minis.
Can't beat progress, man. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, since last time I got together, I painted my Jade Falcon Force for the Liberation of Black Earth, which, it was Jade Falcon, so I had to do it. It was forced upon me by David. It's all his fault. But as he swerves and gives me the look. Other than that, I haven't gotten too much done. I'm trying to pick out my force for LVO. I'll just announce that I'm doing World's League Civil War, and it's just kind of like popping that in and then just going with it. It's kind of difficult to this is kind of cool, but then this is kind of cool, but then this is kind of cool. So anyways, just trying to work through that. But as far as painting goes, just the Jade Falcon, and then a couple of games with the guys up here in Fort Collins, and then the event we'll talk about later. So boom.
Cool. John, what's up with you this month?
Not a whole heck of a lot. I got a game in at Hobbytown Westminster on Friday. That was pretty fun. And hobby-wise, I've been painting X-Wing stuff, but not Battletech. So, sorry guys. Yeah, right.
Dave, what you been up to?
So, the deep, dark terrors of the MUL have really gotten me this last couple of months with deciding on what my LVO list will be, which has finally solidified itself. I got a couple of practice games in on it and ordered all of my minis for it, so those should be getting here this week, and I will be starting on painting that. But as far as any hobby progress that I got done, really the only thing I got done was I cut apart and rebased some Clicks infantry to give myself a couple more battle armor and a couple more infantry options for when I play. But yeah, other than that, it's really just getting ready to start airbrushing and painting up the LVO list.
Right on. What Clicks infantry?
I'm looking at a salamander. I had a couple of PAL suits. I think I had some ground infantry, and then I also had... They're not gnomes. They are the Aquilius battle armor? No.
Achilles battle armor?
The Aquilius, the Sea Fox ones.
Oh.
The Undyne.
The Undyne ones. The Undyne elementals. Yeah. All right.
I know I have one or two of the Sylph VTOL elementals from the Clicks age if you want those.
Well, since Wolfnet won't let me use those, I had to buy those.
What'd you get for picking a weirdo list?
That's fair.
Hey, you know what? Nothing is scarier and less effective than a flying battle armor that only shoots at short range.
Yay!
Excited to witness it. Yep.
I did a classic Hex game with a couple of guys down in Westminster the weekend before we did the Colorado Springs thing. And then I've been painting up my LVO list and revising some things for my 500 pointer that I'm bringing. And then also, John and I have been coming up with our own little game that we'll all talk about later. So
You want to call it a
And
game?
I've been
Yeah,
what?
it's gonna be more like a stomping or spanking.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I feel it's well, it might be a stomping for you, but we'll
That's
see how
true.
that goes. And then I got some writing stuff I've been doing for an upcoming shrapnel. So that's my hobby progress this month. All right. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Well, actually, this is like the appetizer. Battle for Black Earth review. So we put on an event. Dave put on the event. He did all the heavy lifting, really. Down in Colorado Springs last weekend. What weekend was that? The 19th, 29th? I don't even know what day it is.
19th.
Yeah, the 19th. And it was the Battle for Black Earth. And it was a Hexless Classic event. And I'll let Dave take the lead on this one.
So at the event, we had about 10 players that showed up. So we had Braden, Josh, Dusty, Ryan, Jack, Damien, Mike, Kalen, Rick, John, and Matt. And it was a really great day. It was a little cold, but the store was as accommodating as always. The scenarios went off really well. First round, the inner sphere took the day and pretty much just knocked out their objectives and fled the field. So they had to get a talking to by their force commander about if you're gonna fight the Jade Falcon, you need to actually fight the Jade Falcon. So going into the second round, things got a little more interesting because the force commanders actually dropped in on the field, and we had a couple of people that had to drop out because of other engagements and kind of last minute things that came up where they had to leave. So the TOs stepped in and played. In round 2, the players were fighting to destroy the clan command posts, and round 2 actually came down to a tie on objective points, but the inner sphere eked out a battle value destroyed advantage over the Jade Falcons, which led us into round 3, which was the fight for the starport. And I will say that the exploding buildings were a big hit to some, and a less of a great thing for other people. At the end of the day, the Jade Falcons successfully defended the planet and drove the Inner Sphere players off, but the Inner Sphere commander did fall to a very reckless Marauder 2C, destroying the Night Star.
Sounds like nothing but a win to me. Good job, Jade Falcon.
It was a pretty epic win for the Jade Falcons.
Yeah, it really came down to the wire. It was a lot of fun. The players had a good time. Our top players were Damien on the Inner Sphere side. He took home that really great Night Star, and Braden on the Jade Falcon side took home the summoner that was painted. So, great job to them. They did a fantastic job. Total battle value killed for the day. The way it ended up was Braden ended up with 77k destroyed. Braden ended up with 7.7k destroyed. Josh, who I subbed in for in games 2 and 3, came in at 7.5k. Dusty came in at 6.9k. Damien on the Inner Sphere side top block was 5.9k. Mike came in at 5.8k. Ben and Charles came in at 5.5k. Ryan at 4.8k. Kaylin at 4.2k. Jack at 4.1k. Rick at 3.4. John G at 2.2. And Matt coming up at the rear with 1.3k killed.
I have an explanation. I'll leave it till later. Okay.
It's almost 1.4. It's almost.
So some of the funny stories from the table side that came out was I was in round 3. I was playing against Damien. and I was subbing in for Josh, and Josh handed me a list that had a Rifleman 2C and a Marauder 2C, and I just decided to go straight after the clan commander who Ben so graciously dropped on our table.
The dice, bro. The dice said it was going to your table.
Well, what ended up happening to Damien was Damien unfortunately put a third of his force in between two explosive buildings, and I took advantage of that. And I destroyed one of his demolishers, crippled another one of his mechs, and he got some pretty good shots on my Rifleman 2C, who then failed his piloting check, fell over. The next round, tried to get up, fell over again, knocked himself out, and then I went straight into close range with the Night Star with the Marauder 2C and unloaded everything. And yeah, so 3 PPCs and a couple of pulse lasers all went into I want to say it was the left torso of the Night Star and took it out. On the table next to me was Rick, and Rick, I'm sorry, but we're going to tell this story.
Oh,
Your TSM mech.
The pain.
Your TSM mech suffered a critical failure of its TSM, locked up its hip, fell over, and I think one of you guys know more about what happened exactly to that mech. But
yeah, I think I caught more of it because we had to look up some rules on it, and I believe Rick, it was his first time using TSM, and he rolled Snake Eyes, and it failed, which causes
one critical per leg.
One critical per leg. He fell down, and then he stood up the next turn and tried to use it again the next turn after that, and failed that one as well, and gave him 2 more criticals per leg. And his heaviest, I think it was a Berserker, 100-ton, melee mech that he just couldn't move at that point, and he was like, "This is the worst experience I've ever had using a Berserker." So
now what I want to hear is, what is Matt's excuse for only killing 1395 BV?
So here's the deal. I learned a very great lesson in actually reading the player packet, because I went into this, kind of with the Wolfnet mindset that the objective points is what wins you the battle, right? That wins you the tourney or whatever it may be. So first battle, I went into it gung ho, got all the objective points and escaped, and there wasn't much damage. Second one, went in, I still need those objective points. So went in, got all the objective points. A lot of damage splashed around, but didn't really have anything destroyed or anything. So I go into the third one, I'm looking at the description, and this is when I finally realize, I actually have to destroy things or do some severe damage to get some BV, and this is what actually counts for the day. So I finally realized this, and then I walk up to my board, and there's Dusty. Poor Dusty. I feel bad for him because during the third game I was kind of a surly sailor, but I walk up there, and of course he gets the Jade Falcon Commander. So the BV was pretty heavily favored towards his side. Not only that, but then BourBen was too close to my board or something, because he infected my dice, and I only hit. I mean, I was pouring shots into every mech, and nothing was hitting. I hit with about 3 to 4% of my shots. It would be like 1 or 2 per round. And I poured everything, my whole force, into a Miss Lynx for 3 turns and destroy it from short range. So I ended up in just horrible shots. So the turn that I actually was going to go for BV, didn't destroy anything, and in return was like in the round that we ended, destroyed 2 mechs, and 3 of my pilots fell down 2 times straight and blacked out. So that's how it ended.
In spite of your efforts,
in spite of my best efforts, I still got some BV, but yes, I ended up there. ended up there in last place, and I fully deserved it. So that was the story. I really enjoyed the event until the third game, and I was when my dice kept rolling onto ones and twos, I was not so pleased. So it was still fun overall, but I feel bad. Dusty, if you listen to this, I apologize. I generally don't get so down in the dumps, but man, I needed to. The dice did not perform well, so it was a good event, anyways.
Well, to put it into context, the game 1 was 4,000 BV, game 2 was 5,400 BV, and game 3 was 6,000 BV. And each of the commanders showed up on game 2 and 3 and added a 2,600 BV advantage to whoever got them. So
I felt it. The that Thor / Summoner did not miss, and it just kept peeling my armor off, and the other mechs just kept plinking in. So nothing I tried in game 3 worked. I did a charge, even hit with it, but then it just hit leg armor. I mean, I did physical. Into the rear of a mislinks, shots hitting, none hitting on the rear torso armor. I mean, it was crazy, but yeah, it was okay in the end.
Well, and then once the Innersphere Commander died on Damien's table, it had a direct effect to every other Innersphere player in the event, and I felt that. So once the Innersphere Commander died, all Innersphere players got a -1 to their initiative for the rest of
at least
the
it only
day.
died on round 3.
And that sucked. It's true.
After that,
but it
I
still
did not
sucked,
have
man.
the initiative for the rest of the game, so it hurt.
Blame Damien.
Damien.
But it made sense from the narrative standpoint that the event was supposed to be, and I appreciated it, even though
Or you
it
can
was
blame
fun.
me
hated it
for
at the
killing
time.
it.
It's all Dave's. It's
Also,
all
it is
Dave's
your
fault.
fault.
It's all Dave's fault. Mike, you were a player all day. What was your experience?
So I had a lot of fun. Game 1, I played against Braden. It was my 4 Kellhounds versus his 2 Jade Falcons. He had a pretty nice ice ferret that went unconscious and fell down on his own, if I remember
Kind of what
correctly.
happens when you knock yourself
I think
out.
I wrote it up. Yeah, and then so he was immobile next turn, and I had to take advantage of it, and then he exploded. Or no, he paid it back by blowing up my 2-3 commando. Yes, I put a 2-3 pilot in a commando. Dave,
Well, it's 'cause you
I'm
are.
crazy.
That is like the most exploding mech you can have.
But he exploded
Surprise.
and he died. Game 2 was against Dusty, and that was a good game. It was a little unfun for Dusty at first, and I apologize for that because I was messing some things up, which we fixed
You got
before
a little
anything was
confused.
resolved. But I was a little confused. Thank you, Ben. So we fixed that, and then things turned around, and he started having a lot more fun. And I lost another pilot in that game. I had 1 pilot death per game. And game 3 was against Charles, who also used the wonderful explodey buildings to his benefit. My wonderful bushwhacker was trying to flank around to my right, and it was about a ½ inch too close to a building.
Poor fella.
And it exploded because Charles shot it, and that pilot died too.
He took two head hits, right?
Yeah.
He took 2 head hits,
yeah,
and one of them was a
'cause-
cockpit hit on the critical roll.
Ouch.
Yeah, and then ammo exploded, which was 2 more hits, so that put him at 6. He's dead. And then at game 3, I was doomed from the get-go because my AC-20 on the Avatar missed the Piranha, and then the Piranha took out crippled my, what was it? What did I have? It was a light, it was fast, it was jumpy. Spider. There we go. He crippled the spider who couldn't get up. He was on the ground the whole time. for about 5 turns. So his new name is Sponge because he was shot a lot and never died until about 4 turns later. But yeah, ever since that spider went down and I missed the shot on the piranha, I just couldn't recover from that because it was just harassing my backfield the whole time. And then the final nail in the coffin was the explodey building versus a very, very nice, pristine bushwhacker.
Those buildings wrecked
but no, it was a lot of fun.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I leveled 2 of the buildings hoping that it would get his Eben Jag, but both of them were non-explodey. But he knew which ones were explodey beforehand, and I got just a little too close. But it was a lot of fun.
In my game too, I played Rick, and he and I had just a shenanigans-filled game. I brought 2 light mechs and the Marauder 2, and he brought his Victor. I want to say he had another melee mech. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was a Hatchet Man and something. But anyway, he could not kill my light mechs. They were in just this scrum right behind a 2-story building, and just punching and kicking and everything, and nobody was dying. And then I got a very lucky shot on his poor Victor, which was completely fresh, with my Marauder 2C ERPPC to the head, and there was no more Victor. So that was kind of the end of our second game, and I don't think that led into Rick being very happy.
I think I kept walking by that table, and I kept making the comment, like, what are you guys doing? A little rugby scrum over there? What's happening there?
We were having a slap fight behind a building, and it was just not going well for anybody because nobody was hitting anybody.
Well, I got to jump in on the first game, and me and Matt played. I was, John, you'll appreciate this. I was not foretelling anything, but I was playing Jade Falcons against
Prophecy.
Matt. No, not prophecy.
You heard it here, folks.
You know what though? I can
Does it
kind
feel
of
good?
lean a little that way. I mean, the piranha
Yeah.
is no slouch.
You
Matt
pulled
did
yourself
not.
into your leather chaps, put on your feathers
Yeah,
on your head, and you're like,
exactly.
"Ooh, this feels
What I think
good."
Ben is trying to say is that he is pan-factional.
I am. I'm definitely pan-factional.
Yeah, that whole game, all I had was your units in my rear the entire time. So whatever that says about Ben, I don't know, but it was every round, 2 shots to my rear. So it was not fun.
Yeah, and the piranha and the dasher, and I think I had a sentinel.
Yeah.
C.
Yeah.
And then 2 elemental points, and pretty much every turn the piranha was unloading 12 machine guns into the back of one of Matt's mechs.
Ben, weren't you playing the list I made?
I was.
Yeah.
I just picked some shit out that you'd come up with, and I was like, all right, let's see how this works. So
Yeah, I made a list for Intersphere and Clan just on the off chance that we had an odd number of players, and we started the day out with an odd number of players. So yeah, Ben and Charles got to take my Jade Falcon list, which I believe was, oh god, it was a Uller.
it was an Uller, it was a piranha, it was a
Uller,
dasher,
Piranha, Sentinel,
a Loki, a sentinel, and there was a
Oh, whoa.
maybe a
I think there was an
Thor.
Eben Jag in there too.
Yeah, or something like that. Something. But you had limits on what battle value you could take per scenario or per iteration or round or whatever, So,
Yeah, I took Mike's advice when I built that list, and I built it with 4,000 and then 5,400, and then fit in whatever I could at the end.
yeah. So I was going with the 4,000, the very first iteration, which was like $4,000, and all I could fit in there was a dasher, a sentinel, and a piranha. and
It was
2
enough.
elementals.
It was enough. There was no more needed.
But to Matt's credit, he focused directly on the objectives, and pretty much by like turn 3, he had won the game. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do as much damage as I can right now, just to make your life difficult for the rest of the day.
As my Zeus like limps slowly back to my side of the board, yeah.
Without his ER large laser and his
Uh,
something else had an ACE or something like that. It didn't make it.
it helps when you shoot him in the back.
That's how it works. That's how it goes.
A big thank you goes out to Inconceivable Games for hosting us. They also worked with me to get about 2/3 of the prize support. And also to a big shout out goes to Derek over at Aries Games and Miniatures, because he sent us a couple of force packs and dice that we were able to hand out as prizes. So, big thank you to both of them. You made the event what it was, and it was a lot of fun, and everybody had a great time.
So for you guys that haven't played a lot of Classic, especially on the Hexel side, what were your thoughts, Mike, Matt, whoever wants to jump in?
I think it just reminded me that in my mind, Classic is more about luck. It's all those headshots and hits or not hits. Man, it sure seems more swingy. Like as far as things, because even if you do hit, then the ability to hit somewhere where it actually matters, it's still, you can get a lot of shots where it hits leg armor and the leg armor never gets removed enough to actually do anything, versus hitting basically with Alpha Strike, you're hitting a center torso every time. So yeah, it just reminded me of that. Like it was fun because I got more into the nitty gritty. I still like Classic quite a bit because of that, because you get into the nitty gritty. But man, when it swung against me, I was displeased. But yeah, I liked it.
As an Alpha Strike player, I like Hexless Classic a lot because it allows us to kind of get that good crossover between Alpha Strike and Classic. You get the cool 3D board. You're using all the rules of Classic. The only thing that I would say is a downside to Hexless Classic is you need to have a bigger board. The boards we played on were a little too small. Everyone was pretty much in long range from the get-go, so there wasn't a lot of maneuvering that we could do. So there wasn't a lot of tactics. It was pretty much go at the other guy, kill them. So if I could do it again, I would want to make the boards bigger so that it was a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, the only tactics I could really do were basically terrain-based. If there was a level 2 heal, then I could use that. But otherwise, it wasn't like I could use my different ranges, and really bracket enemy units with those ranges. It was more like, if I need to get even closer, I can hide behind this hill, but that's about it. Yeah.
Mike, what about you?
I know you guys have heard me say it a few times, so some of you might be annoyed of it at this point. But no, I've always liked both Classic and Alpha Strike for their strengths, each one individually. I'm also a big lore nerd, so I love Classic for that, because as I'm playing it, it feels like I'm writing my own book, which is another thing that I know I've said before. But and I love the speed of Alpha Strike, so Hexless Classic definitely felt like a good marriage of the two systems. There are still some quirks that could probably be updated. Me and you talked about this briefly, but because it hasn't been touched, at least on what we have publicly, since 2006. But no, it was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed it. It was faster than standard Classic because you didn't have that counting hex analysis paralysis. So you got to speed up the game a little bit that way, but you still had a full record sheet, which was a lot of fun. Hence my new sponge spider.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get an update from listening to Ray's comments on the WolfNet podcast that the miniature rules are not on the table right now for what they're planning to update. So hopefully sometime in the future, maybe they'll take that up as a project.
Was that from the episode or on the server?
From the episode.
That was
Cubby.
not.
Oh, it was Cubby?
Yeah, it was Cubby.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
my bad.
Which is not a horrible thing. I mean, I know from conversations that have happened that there are things being looked at as far as the core Total Warfare rules, but it's something that's on the table right now, but not necessarily anything decided anywhere close to being determined yet. So it's a lot of discussions. Anything else from the Battle for Black Earth?
Had fun. I sucked. It was cool.
Yeah, going back to the need for a bigger map. So I used Megamech to print all my sheets out with already having the inch conversions. And just for example, an LRM-20 has a max long range of 42 inches, and a Gauss rifle has a max long range of
so
44
even when we
inches.
started the day, everybody was already in long range. So
Well, Mike did learn
A lot
the
of
difference
medium.
between indirect fire, Arrow 4, and Artemis 4.
That was the confusion. Because I just saw the A and 4 and was like, Arrow 4. But it was
I
definitely
remember
Artemis.
Dusty was
So
like, wait, what? This game just got horrible. I don't want to play this anymore.
he was super demoralized. Yeah, because I thought I was going to use semi-guided ammo with tag, and then I came to realize, for one, there's a BV increase there, which I didn't know about. But two, my unit had Artemis, so if it has Artemis, you can only use Artemis ammo, and that's what caused the confusion. Because when we were reading through the rules for tag and semi-guided munitions, he was like, it ignores how much, all of the modifiers. He's like, well, this game just got super unfun, and I apologize for that.
You apologized,
I messed
and
up.
then you said, "Oh
We
wait,
fixed
it's
it."
Arrow 4."
And then we were both like, what? Or you and him. Yeah. And then it was like, oh no, it's Artemis. So I'm sorry. But we fixed it before any damage was resolved or before a shot was even fired. But
There was about
My
5
bad,
or 10
bro.
minutes of Dusty going, I don't want to play this game anymore. This is terrible. And
Mike ruining the hearts and minds of the other players in Colorado.
Mike fixed it all up and got it all sorted out. So it worked out. Actually, I think it worked out in Dusty's favor towards the end, didn't it?
oh yeah, he obliterated a fair amount.
Well, I'd say so, from the positioning that Dusty ended up in and the positioning that Mike ended up in at the end of the day.
Yes.
Heyo.
All right. Any save rounds for Battle of Black Earth?
A quick question. I'm not a classic player. I'm only Alpha Strike. And there's sometimes where, I've looked at classic and I'm like, wow. Like Matt said, it's like, wow, that is a very random game. Like there are a lot of die rolls. But then by comparison, Alpha Strike can be so simple. I'm kind of curious to you guys, if you could bring one part of classic into Alpha Strike, like what would you bring, if anything?
I would bring in what the DFA Destiny combat system brings in is weapon location hits, where they, even though they don't have the full bubble sheet, they still have their armor split out into different places. So it's kind of consolidated, but it's kind of fun to blow off an arm rather than just hit center torso every time.
I think for me, I would bring in the concept of running and shooting. So you could walk and shoot, run and shoot with a modifier, but if you were to sprint, then you wouldn't be able to shoot. I would like to, at least for some units, those Intersphere heavies and assaults, like to move maybe a little bit further, but while taking that penalty for running.
Mike, I think some of that is covered in TAC Ops for sprinting units, and I can't remember I know there's sprinting rules for classic, but I can't remember if there's a modifier for shooting.
Yeah, I do remember somebody had mentioned that it's in like the advanced rules, or it's in TAC Ops, but porting something from classic to Alpha Strike. Because in Alpha Strike, it's either you stand still, you walk, or you ran. And if you ran, you can't do shit. So I would have liked to, if it were me, probably. So like you've got your walk, and that's your standard, and then running would give you say a +1, whereas jumping gives you a +2 to shoot. So if you were to run, that it'll give you a +1 for shooting, and it's not as far. So maybe like a 1.25, your standard move, because a sprint is 1.5 times your standard move. But that's probably what I would pull over from Classic, is the ability to move a little further at a cost to shoot out, but still be able to shoot.
Yeah.
You know.
Dave, what about you?
I think kind of in line with what Mike says. I think being able to sprint and shoot would be good and bad for moving it over from Classic to Alpha Strike. But there's differences that I really like between the two systems, and I appreciate the fact that they are different. So, I mean, I kind of like them the way they are. I don't think that there is a specific thing that I would want to be brought over from Classic to Alpha Strike or vice versa. I do agree with Matt. I think it would be fun to have a little bit more thematic situations in Alpha Strike where you lose an arm or you lose a leg instead of a motive hit or a critical hit. But I also understand the need for simplicity in Alpha Strike when you're playing with large numbers of units.
Fair.
Yeah,
That's
totally
fair.
get that.
I mean, me personally, as a longtime Classic guy, I'd like to see more of the ammo explosion effects ported over to Alpha Strike. You know, because as some of us have seen, ammo explosions in Classic are really bad.
Devastating.
And in Alpha Strike, it's kind of like you get an ammo explosion on a crit chart and your mech's dead, you know, as opposed to in Classic, you've still got something left sometimes, you know, depending on what you're playing.
Well, you do if you have case, or if you don't have case, you're dead. But if you have case, I mean, you only take an extra point of damage. So, I mean, it's
Right.
not too bad.
So
Maybe if in Alpha Strike, if you took a case hit or an ammo explosion and you have case, maybe you also take a weapon hit critical at the same time to make the ammo explosion more damaging.
Right. Yeah, because you're losing the whole ammo.
You're
for
losing the
weapons
whole
or something.
section.
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, cool. Yeah, I appreciate your guys' insight. I mean, y'all have been playing longer than myself, and it's always interesting to hear what other people want.
All right. Cool. Good question. Anything else from Battle of Black Earth? Nothing heard. All right. Let's get into the main course. Developing and running scenarios. So we talked a lot about last episode about developing campaigns. I think this episode we were going to focus on trying to develop scenario concepts, the standard scenario concepts that are in your campaign ops, that are in Total Warfare, that are in, you know, TAC Ops or the Alpha Strike Commanders Edition, and also some of the non-standard stuff that you can come up with.
So personally, I like homebrewed scenarios. I think it allows for a level of creativity that the kind of stock scenarios don't give you when they establish your left and right limits, or if you're playing on a specific timeline or a specific unit within the timeline. You're limited on where you can and can't go with the story. With the homebrewed campaigns, you get that flexibility that really allows you to explore creatively what you want to do as a GM or as a group of players. You're not stuck in the canon timeline of, you know, what you are and are not allowed to do. So for me, that is kind of the cream of the crop for scenarios and campaign play. Now, granted, you know, it means you have to be willing to put in that effort and time to create that scenario for your players. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's nice to be able to kind of write your own story.
So what is your favorite type of scenario, Dave?
Probably, I won't say objective based, but it's got to have some risk and reward. So whether you are escorting a unit, or you have to take a hardened facility, or you have to achieve some objective that's going to move the story along, not just a stand-up fight, because a stand-up fight just is kind of vanilla to me. It's kind of boring, and you need to have skin in the game. You need to have a reason of why you're fighting and why you're there.
Nice. Last episode, we talked quite a bit about campaign development, like Ben stated, and we just wanted to kind of go into the bits and pieces of campaigns, which are the scenarios that you actually play. And being a GM, I've like created different scenarios, and basically they're all kind of riffs on pre-built ones. And some of the places where you can find these pre-built scenarios are like what Ben stated in Total Warfare and in the Alpha Strike Commanders Edition. Those are kind of both sides, the classic side and the Alpha Strike side that we usually talk about. But I like to take those and kind of morph them into a little bit more when I do kind of the homebrew type of deal. I really like multiple objectives for a scenario rather than just one. So my favorites are anything like, if we look at the AS350 from Wolfnet, my favorites are kind of like domination or capture the flag, where you have multiple places where you kind of have to use your tactics. Am I going to focus here versus there, and having to use your units in multiple places. I really like generating scenarios that have hidden units and kind of surprises for players. If I'm a GM, if we're playing, if we're both playing, then I wouldn't use any hidden units or anything like that. But that is a fun thing if you're kind of setting things up for other players, is especially like hidden infantry in an urban setting. That's kind of really fun because that's very thematic. So those are just some things that I think about and really, really like. I think overall, my favorite scenario of everything that I've played is the Wolfnet AS350 Domination, because it's got 5 objective points that you can squabble over. And so you've got to think of where you're going to place or move your units towards, because you got to capture 4 of them to win the game. So that's kind of my fave. What about the rest of you guys? What scenarios do you like, and what do you kind of consider when you look at a scenario? Jump in.
Easily my favorite of the Wolfnet scenarios is the Overrun, where you have to control your home edge while dominating the remaining sections of the board. That's just very much so. It feels right, like you're building momentum. You're pushing your opponent out of zones. You're pushing your opponent out of zones procedurally, and there's a certain momentum to the match. It builds, and then you have the denouement, the kind of like climax at the end of like, oh man, I was able to down his grasshopper, now I control the zone, time's up, I've got it. It feels very good. There's a lot of tension in that game mode. I think that answers it, right?
When it comes to scenario creation and stuff like that, and I think really when you start looking at the big picture of campaign, the campaign development and like how you want to structure it, because I've had a little bit of experience with this, of how to link these scenarios to build the entire campaign up. You really have to look at what is the scenario going to lead to and what does it come from, So I think you have to really kind of look at the scenario if it's part of a larger campaign. If it's not part of a larger campaign, you can look at the Wolfnet stuff. You can look at, the Total Warfare, the Campaign Ops, Alpha Strike Commanders Edition that has kind of standalone scenarios that you can just play to have some type of objective.
So what's your favorite standalone, Ben?
There was a game I played, and John's gonna bust my balls for this, but it was a game I played back in like 0304 in the Marshall Olympiad, and it had where you had to set up 8 bombs on your side, and the enemy could set up 8 bombs on their side, and you had to go find their bombs while fighting off them at the same time. It was a very interesting scenario because you had to kind of play it out as far as you had to have a blocking force or a force that could contain the enemy while you had other units on your side trying to find these freaking bombs everywhere. It added a dimension to the gameplay that you don't normally get in your everyday Total Warfare campaign ops type scenarios, you know.
Yeah, that sounds kind of like Hold the Line, the Wolfnet, where you had 3 points where you could defend while attacking your opponent's 3. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, it's pretty close to that. I'm trying not to plug Wolfnet as much as I normally do. But
Now we need to rally behind one tournament system.
I'm with you. I feel like there's going to be a tournament system that's going to show up here sooner or later. So you know, there's a lot of. This was an interesting type because it's classic based as opposed to Alpha Strike based.
Mm-hmm.
So you still had to kind of incorporate some of the battle armor. You still had to incorporate some of the vehicles that you normally get on the Alpha Strike side that Classic doesn't really kind of enforce, I guess. I don't know if that's a word I'm looking for, but you know, that's what I'm saying right now. So there's different scenarios you can do, absolutely. And it's really what you come up with, either as a standalone or as a linking type scenario to build your campaign on.
Yeah, Mike, what about yourself? Standalone, campaign, either or? What suits your fancy?
Well, so far my experience in this realm of gaming, aside from the standard stand-up fight, is still relatively limited. Outside of the Wolfnet side, I've played a handful of the DFA wargaming scenarios with Alex. We did one a few weeks back, but I just really like I like scenarios that are more objective based instead of just the stand-up fight, which is technically a scenario, but scenarios that are objective based and of late I've definitely enjoyed, especially with this Black Earth event. It really threw on a whole new tactical level of like unit management with like you can't let everyone die. So now you've got to think about so that narrative focus or with just moving not necessarily standalone scenarios, but actually built into the campaign. I'm starting to like that a lot more because it adds a lot more strategy to it. And my whole life, all I've ever loved is strategy games. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm slowly getting more into it. And but yeah, I like scenarios built into a campaign that are objective based.
Yeah,
that's me.
And you put down a note that I thought was interesting, you know, as far as optional rules and where to kind of limit those. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that was me.
That was
me.
Did
I do that?
Me.
Like your thoughts? No.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to scenario stuff, you know, I always like adding at least one optional rule that a lot of people really don't play with. You know, like even if it's a terrain type rule, like, hey, we're gonna for this scenario, everything is under tundra. You know, so you have to look at the tundra rules and figure out, okay, that adds some mobility issues for Classic, that adds some mobility issues for Alpha Strike, that also adds some bonuses to firing and overheating, you know, or is it a case of optional rules for like 0G? You know, what does that do for a mech in its movement phase? What does it do for its firing phase? What does it do for, you know, the different variations that happen there? So I always like adding at least one optional rule for a scenario to kind of get players to start thinking about the wider scope that's out there, you know?
Yeah, I like incorporating optional rules too. Mike? Yeah, I see. Yeah.
No, so the game I played the other day with Alex, we included the formation bonuses, which is slowly, I think, somewhat catching on here in Colorado. He's not a big fan of it, but I mean, to each their own, you know. But when we were planning it up, so we included some battlefield effects. So rounds 1 through 3, we said that there was a geomagnetic storm due to a solar flare or whatever from the near star, and so as a result of that, we used sensor blips, and so we also threw in a blizzard, right? So because in the rules for Alpha Strike, at least, visual line of sight is 140 inches on a clear day. So even if there's that geomagnetic storm and your sensors are out, your visual line of sight is still stupid far. So we also added in a blizzard, which has a visual line of sight out to 10 inches. So now we really had to use the active probes to increase sensor range, and anyone that didn't have an active probe just was regular sensor range, which was 12 inches. And that was a lot of fun, not being able to know immediately what your enemy has on the other side of the board. All you see is that sensor blip, and all you can really see and discern from it is the TMM die. So if it's a 4, obviously it's like, okay, that's a super fast guy. So in Alpha Strike, the more you play, the more you know the units. When you see that TMM die, you get a general understanding of what its general movement profile is. Whereas if you were using sensor blips in, say, Classic, you would have no idea because your TMM is based on how far you move. So you lose a little bit of that into Alpha Strike, but you lose a little bit of everything from Classic into Alpha Strike. But it was still a lot of fun. We were going to use some battlefield support points and throw in some offboard arties, some minefields, this, that, and the other, but we didn't actually get around to doing it. But yeah, it was a lot of fun just throwing in more unused and not commonly used optional rules. So big fan.
I really like how you
optional
mentioned
rules.
the blip counters, Mike. I think one of the funner, or the more fun, that's not a word, funner. The more fun.
Go with it.
I don't know what it is, but the scenario that I really liked, we used blip counters with concealing unit data in Alpha Strike, which I think is really cool because usually in our pickup games, you know, you can just look over, you'll ask like, oh, how much more armor does this guy have? And that really changes like what you're going to do for the round. But when we played most of the scenarios in this Bloodwind campaign up here in Fort Collins recently, and most of those with blips, at least at the beginning of the scenario, and then with concealing unit data where you don't share data, you just have to go on what you think they are. Even though they may find out what they are, they still may not know the variant, so they may not know how much armor or what weapons or whatever it may be. But it's really fun because then it's much more realistic. Like, you know, realistically, you're not going to have like, oh, it has, you know, five more armor left, so I know to fire at it with just this many shots. And so I really like the blips and the concealing unit data thing.
Yeah, we had talked about using the concealed record sheets, which forces you as a tactical commander, right, to remember how much damage I've actually inflicted. And we had talked about it, somewhat agreed to it, but in our old practiced Alpha Strike ways of constantly asking how much does that guy have left? Okay, thanks. Now I'm going to obliterate it. So we said we were going to do it, but then we ended up not doing it because we're just so much stuck in our ways of, hey, you know, how much has he got left? How about him? How about him? Okay, I'm just going to focus here, which is all well and cool, and you know, especially from a tournament aspect where you want games to be as fast as possible. But if you are going in a campaign and scenario based, highly recommend concealed record sheets, because if you are going for that narrative focus, it does force you to pay the fuck attention to what you are shooting and how much damage you've actually done. So it adds a lot more.
Also, like you were mentioning, like it actually gives a reason to have all these recon, like recon and the other like Beagle Active Probe and all those other things. So I really think it allows you to have more units because you'll want to use these other ones with sensors and stuff. It's really cool.
And they even say in those optional rules that the active probes, like if you're within sensor range, you are allowed to ask your opponent, if you're using concealed record sheets and concealed unit data, hey, like what's left on that unit, but you'd have to be within the sensor range. And they don't have to tell you if you are outside of that sensor range. And then if you're inside that sensor range, you could ask, hey, like how far does this unit move? And they could, tell you that, but they don't have to tell you everything that's on the sheet.
And that's one of the things too, like, a lot of folks play either in store with their standard, hey, this is the day scenario kind of thing, or they play on Megamech. And probably one of my most enjoyable campaigns or scenarios is using double blind. Megamech has a problem with doing double blind because I guess especially against the bot, where the double blind is basically where you don't know where your other player's moving at, and you've got to just kind of really fine tune your tactics ability and be able to remember, like Mike was saying, about how much damage you've done. The active probes come into play. The sensor blips that people talk about, like Matt used in his last Bloodwind campaign. A lot of that comes into play in a double blind scenario. The issue with double blind is it's very GM intensive, because the GM basically has to run one player on one set of maps and run another player on another set of maps. And once they encounter each other, then you can kind of really start to play the game. I like double blind really a lot, just because it gives you that tactical, like, what is the other guy going to do without being able to see what he's actually doing kind of thing. The sensor blip piece of it is kind of a double blind kind of light, because you don't know what you're getting into. There's things out there, but you're not quite sure what they are. So how many of you have really ever dealt with double blind before?
I haven't done it with strict double blind, but the blips that we used were you would basically know the class of the mech. So we had different blips for light, medium, heavy, and assaults, and so that is the limit of the information that you would get. So we wouldn't even put out like TMM dice or anything like that. That would all be calculated for. We would put out TMM dice, but that was it, just to help calculations in combat, but no other information was given. So we used blips, and that was with each class, and that was it.
I haven't used double blind, but thinking back on it, like if you were using sensor blips again, if they're not, so we were also using weight class specific blips in the future, I would probably say don't do that, because that again adds in more of the blindness of it. If you're not even within sensor range, how would your sensors know if it's a medium class? You know what I mean? And then on from there, if you're not in range or sensor range or visual range, then put something down annotating that it has moved, but don't actually show the TMM. Because if a TMM 1 comes out, I know, especially, I can narrow it down based on general understanding. Like, so if it's a TMM 1 and my enemy is playing clan, I'm going to know that is a big dude. You know what I mean? And avoid that, or line up some good avenues on that.
I'm interested that Battletech took the choice to give blips an identifier based on their TMM instead of their size. That's surprising to me. But my experience with double blinds, I don't have any in BattleTech, but I do have some with naval wargaming. So like Imperial Japanese Navy versus USN in like 1940, whatever. And what's really fun there is that, because it's the ocean. There's no terrain features really, except for weather, like squalls. You just have a giant blue mat, and it's up to the GM, once you have spotted someone, the two tables may not even be touching. They might be so far away. It's like thousands and thousands of meters. But no BattleTech experience with double blind. No, just naval wargaming.
All right. So we talked a little bit about introducing new rules, and I think a lot of us talked about our kind of favorite way to do that, but how many is too many?
I think one. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Anytime you add complexity to a game, you need to be asking yourself the question, okay, how much more fun is this going to add to the game? And if you're reached a point where the complexity is greater than the fun, then you need to pare it back. And obviously that's going to be a lot harder to determine in person. The more you do it, the more events you run, you'll have a greater feel for it. And it's really up to you as the GM to kind of gauge your player interest, because some players are just going to be alpha strike players that just kind of want to get it done. I only have so much time away. And then you have some players that come from the classic side, and it's like, they're okay to sit down for 6 hours. So you need to gauge your audience, and you need to have kind of a analysis of, okay, I'm adding this amount of complexity, but how much fun am I adding? And you need to kind of, if not achieve a perfect balance, at least be within a margin of error, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. My game with Alex, it was a one-off. It wasn't a campaign or anything. It was a one-off scenario. But I think I was a little too excited about my fancy new map with its grid lines.
Thank you, Matt.
So
Aries.
Match by Mars.
Oops, I went Roman.
Yeah, that's all good.
Same job.
But when we were coordinating it beforehand, planning out like, hey, what all do we want to use? I think I went a little too heavy into it, because we were like, I was like, yeah, let's use BSPs, let's use like all of these optional rules, and then we ended up only using. We ended up forgetting entirely about the BSPs, and we ended up only adding in the blip and the weather effects and sensor range. So I guess technically 3, probably 2 to 3 if they're closely connected. So like the sensors and the battlefield weather effects, those kind of went hand in hand. So that was easy to do. But I would probably say no more than 2, 3 if they're connected together. Because I tried to go way too heavy into it, and yeah, we ended up just not the other ones,
Totally. I mean, if you forget a rule, that's a pretty good indicator that maybe, you need to take a hard look at it. Is it worth including? Yeah,
it was too much at once. But yeah. And since we said there was a blizzard, the blizzard lasted for the first 3 turns, and because of the in the book, a blizzard adds a +1, or not a blizzard, light and heavy snow, I think it was, adds a +1 to shoot. So for those first 3 turns, everyone had an additional +1 for the weather, and then it went away on turn 4. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it really depends on who you're playing against, who your players are, depending on how much do you want to overwhelm them with an extra rule or 2 extra rules or 3 extra rules. It really depends on who you're playing and what their comfortability is, I know there's some things that I've written in the past, we'll say that, where I think at the most I've only added in like 2 special rules. Like, hey, you can play with these if you want, kind of thing, where it's like, hey, let's get into hold down and cliffs, or let's get into gravel piles, force withdrawal kind of stuff. It really is a way to, when you build your scenario up, to teach your opponent or your newer player or what have you about, hey, there's a lot of other optional rules that we could play with that would make this more granular, that would make this more of an immersive experience kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think another thing that I would probably suggest even for some of my future games is we always all play with indestructible buildings. But what if you were to actually assign the appropriate CF factor based off the rule book for each building? And it's like, okay, you're on a level 3 building because you could jump up there. What if I shot it out from under you? Right now you've got that fall damage, because you can do that in Alpha Strike too. It's just we never generally do because that adds time. But if you're looking for a somewhat crunchier Alpha Strike experience, especially if you're doing scenarios in a narrative-based campaign, adding in those destructible buildings that then turn into rubble and this, that, and the other, I would highly recommend that for consideration for people wanting to try this stuff out.
So Ben, I'll ask the question that Dave asked last episode. So if you're the beginner, and you're coming into this and you're like, oh, what scenario should I play if I want to play something other than stand up fight? Where would you recommend they go? And maybe if there was one optional rule, what would you add in to give a little flair?
I think the optional rule, I'm not going to say it's the most important. I think it would really depend on the system you're running. If you're running classic, Mike has said that buildings are a huge time sink when it comes to tracking building damage and then falling damage and all kinds of stuff. Buildings are pretty epic when it comes to dealing with extra scenarios. I think really the easiest way to kind of introduce a new player to more optional rules is just adding one different type of environmental, piece of it, whether it be gravity, whether it be heat from the sun because of whatever, how close you are to it, whether it be a glacier or tundra or mud or swamp or something like that. I think that would be the easiest way to kind of ease players into the expansion that's out there for a lot of their different optional rules.
So you would
that makes any sense.
Yeah, you would just stick one of those environmental factors into one of like the pre-built scenarios, whether it be for Alpha Strike or in Total Warfare. You think that would be kind of a good starting point then?
I think so. What do you think?
No, I think it's good. And in addition to that, like in the scenarios, both in Total Warfare and the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition, there's variations as well. So you could, if you get comfortable with one type of scenario, you can throw in the variation as well as, this environmental factor. So you're learning a new option with that particular scenario, but you're also learning something that can be used broadly through all of, whether it be, through all of Battletech type games. So I like it. Yeah,
absolutely. John, what about you? Anything from the Alpha Strike side?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, what would you, if you were teaching a new player, what would you want to, just as a simple add-on to a scenario, what would you want to add on?
Oh, I see. It's going to sound dumb, but the biggest thing that can make a difference on a scenario, if you only have one method of changing the game, is terrain and terrain effects. Like how Mike mentioned blizzards earlier. You could say, oh man, the board is encountering a blizzard right now. All our movement is reduced. All of our line of sight is reduced. That changes the scenario immediately, and you're only changing one thing.
Yeah, have you guys ever looked at like ice? how that changes movement. It's crazy. You're making it's going everywhere.
Yeah, ice
Right.
is pretty gross.
Yeah. So the two easiest ways you can change a scenario is terrain and terrain effects, including climate, and then changing what edge a player deploys from. Those are very simple and easy to implement, but will have very radical effects on gameplay, in my experience.
Okay. Mike, anything?
I would suggest if you're more of a classic player, if for the best way to test this stuff out and actually get a quick understanding of it down after playing through it would be added in on Megamech. Added in on Megamech, and then you can see, after the round is over, when it pulls up the splash page or whatever it's called, that shows all the roll effects, this, that, and the other. And even on the map itself, when you're trying to maneuver through rubble or this, that, and the other, it's a lot faster on Megamech, which is easier for a newer player to digest because it's on the computer. So I would probably recommend or suggest testing that stuff out, even just yourself, if you're doing a ATB campaign against good old Princess. That's the easiest way to learn a lot of the optional rules for Classic is through Megamech. That's how I did it. For Alpha Strike, I think I've already mentioned a few of the ones that are really, I think, pretty easy to implement. It's just a matter of, taking that leap, whether it be destructible buildings, weather effects, and just the BSPs. I'm excited to see the Alpha Strike box set that's coming out soon with the BSP cards included in that, and see how that really starts changing local games, because now we'll all have Alpha Strike BSP cards. But yeah, those are some of the. I know you asked for one, and I gave way more than that, but those picking onesies and twosies out of those is probably the easiest place
All
to
right.
start.
So we talked a little bit about introducing new rules. Let's talk about balancing forces. Why is that important, Matt? As the resident, professional GM, why is balancing forces important?
Pretty low threshold for professional there, but
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think balancing is pretty important especially as a GM, but even just one-offs. I think one-offs are mostly just going to be, especially for Alpha Strike, are going to be PV based. For Total Warfare, the BV is decent about balancing, but I think in some areas it's a little bit more difficult. You have to go into it more. But I think just thinking about like producing your own scenarios and trying to balance things, I think it's just super tough. I think you got to start with a good base, like kind of the pre-built scenarios, and then just modify things slightly, rather than just like going gung-ho and modifying everything all at once. So that's what I've tried to do in the past. You take like for instance, a reconnaissance mission, the reconnaissance scenario, and maybe I add a couple more, things that they have to reconnoiter in the scenario. Maybe I'll add some hidden units, and that's where it ends. Like that's kind of the extent of it for one particular scenario. I don't want to go bonkers, but I like using the pre-builts and then modifying them to suit, especially if you're doing a campaign, to suit kind of the flavor of the campaign and where you want it to flow to. I think if you try and especially make things very uneven to kind of be more realistic, the unevenness makes it so that your objective almost never gets fulfilled. So what you think will happen almost never will happen. So I think that's kind of the danger of having things too uneven, but maybe modifying things slightly so that they're slightly uneven, but you've kind of got like surprises on both sides, advantages on both sides that kind of sort of even out. That's what I would say.
Yeah. The more asymmetric you make a scenario, the more asymmetric you need to make the victory conditions as well. Or one player is going to feel like he's just getting stomped on.
For sure.
Right? Yeah. And kind of while I got the floor, just like anything else, when you are a GM, it is a skill. And there are going to be times when you put a scenario together and you put time into it, and it's still going to suck ass. And the people who participated are going to be like, I didn't have fun, and that's just part of it. That's, you have to have some level of persistence, because every now and then you're going to drop the ball and it's not going to be very fun. And you just have to be able to not take that personally and learn from it, and learn lessons so that you do better next time.
Yeah, and John, I think you mentioned earlier, being able to read the audience, right? So as you get to know, especially like local players more, you're like, okay, I think this person would be comfortable with kind of like branching out in this particular area. Let's try this. And it's an attempt on all sides. It's not just you like, yeah, maybe you suck at GMing or whatever, developing scenarios, but you're all developing, kind of your repertoire together. Mike, I think you had something.
Just kind of going on with what John was talking about, like making sure your players are having fun. Yeah, you can do your best to balance the forces from you as the GM versus the players, but at the same time, it's still a dice game. And if the GM's dice are constantly hot and the players are not, I think that's where the importance of that good old GM screen comes in to hide your dice. So yeah, you might, like, if you recognize, yeah, my players aren't having fun anymore because they are just sucking. Their dice are sucking, and they can't see your dice rolls. And that's when you as a GM start being like, oh, I missed, because they can't tell that you actually like hit.
Yeah.
But I think that's the importance of that GM screen as well, because
not once.
as a GM,
I missed plenty, so it's okay. Yeah. But going on to what you're saying, I do modify things. Like when I have like reinforcements coming on, the number of reinforcements can be modified, right? So like I'm seeing like the PV swing really wild towards me, then I will hold back some reinforcements that could have come on. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, Mike.
Everyone wants to have fun.
And I think that plays into our next question of how do we keep players engaged in the scenario? How do you, as a GM, or how do you as just another opponent, keep your player engaged?
So it's not always just stand-up fight, is what you're saying?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's more objectives out there.
Yeah.
My litmus test is I ask players, okay, name your pilots, name your mech warriors, and now your goal is you're trying to get everybody home, you're trying to maintain your force. And some people take that challenge very much so personally. You're like, oh man, I got to get everybody home. And some people are very callous and they're like, Bentley and Jackson died, whatever, and it really is an effective litmus test. You very quickly divide players into, oh man, they are invested in their force, their story, or they're just trying to roll dice, they're trying to win. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good start. I mean, those little things that you add in to see, like, what are they really looking for? What is your opponent really looking for? And it's totally cool if they just want to roll dice and roll dice for a couple hours and smash each other up. But I think if you have, I think one of the things you really need to have, I think John also mentioned this, is you got to have some reward for going after objectives rather than just it's an objective, right? So that is one critique I'd have for like the WolfNet set of rules is an objective is an objective. It's not like a building, it's not a base, it's not supplies, it's just an objective. And I get it because it's kind of a tournament based thing, but that's what I really like about scenarios within a mission is like you can make it more than that. You can make it, you need to get these supplies and you need to get home, or you need to find this thing and take it away so that there aren't like war crimes committed by nuclear bomb, something like that, where it becomes more than just an objective. So that's one thing I really like as well.
Which is kind of similar to what Dave wrote in for the narrative that we just did, the Battle for Black Earth. Each mission had either, what was it? Mission 1 was a media team, and mission 2 was civilians trying to run away, right? And they were worth SP. And if you controlled that through the end of the game, then you got that extra SP, which could then help you repair more stuff after the round. So there, it was an optional. It was a secondary objective, sure, but it still helped you. And the more sensor towers you destroyed in game 1, the more you destroyed, the more SP you got. No. The only additional SP was the media team or the civilians. But adding a value like that, if you're using the war chest point system or SP or however, making it worthwhile so that it's actually an attractive objective and not just you need to do this because you have to. It's you should do this because it helps you. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of the scenarios too, if you, as you're building your campaign, if you link those scenarios to where damage carries over, that's kind of a really determining factor on how you're going to fight a particular scenario. If you know that your damage is going to carry over to the next scenario, you're going to be a little bit more conservative with some of your stuff. What do you guys think on that end?
No, that's a really good point, in that players who are inexperienced with campaign systems will often be more, they'll take actions that are more risky than more experienced campaign players. And then once they realize that, oh man, half my force is depleted, I'm entering scenario 3 and I've got 2 medium mechs, a crippled light, and a crippled assault mech, is like, there's no way I can win this. And you just start realizing, I'm playing the long game. For me, yes, I have to achieve the objective, but I also have to maintain a coherent force. And that it's a lesson that has to be learned. I think, a lot of people, their first campaign or two, they take casualties that make the situation unrecoverable for them. But then once you learn it, there is always that tension of, do I stick around a couple more turns and try to get this objective, or, oh man, he's really picking up more of a fight than I was expecting. I've got a crippled crusader. Do I call it here?
Yeah, and just to riff on what John is saying is, basically, if you only have, in a campaign system at least, if you only have reward carryover and not the risk, then you lose half the flavor. And so that goes into that balancing that you were asking about earlier. That's the balance as well, as like risk versus reward, into you'll get out of this stuff, you can get some rewards, but you also risk losing your ability to get rewards in the future with the damage that you achieve, is carried over. So yes, I totally agree. It's a really good thing to have, especially in a campaign system.
Yeah. When my first foray, or however you say that wonderful word,
Thank you, France.
into that, yeah, right. The damage carrying over was with this Battle for Black Earth event, and it just added such a strategic element that I thoroughly appreciated. And yeah, like Ben was saying, you're suddenly a lot more conservative. You're definitely focusing a lot more on lining up those most rewardful shots while still keeping yourself as protected as possible. But yeah, that risk carrying over from game to game, with damage carrying through, like, that was a lot of fun. Until an ammo explosion, which threw a through armor crit, and then it's all just dead anyways. You could be as careful as you want, but man, ammo loves to explode.
Welcome to Classic.
But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and anyone else trying to put together a campaign, maybe try and find a way to, like Matt was saying, include that. Yeah, your reward carries through, but also keep that risk carrying through, which is damage. It was a lot of fun.
I think a big part of, especially GMing a scenario, is you've really got to look at, as a GM, overpowering your players. I've played in a lot of different games where some GMs will want to win the scenario against the players, and you've got to look at it from a GM standpoint of what am I trying to get out of this? I'm trying to get repeat players, because if the players feel like they can't win the scenario kind of thing, even if it's carrying over damage, my shit's getting blown up, all that kind of stuff. GMs have to really take it turn by turn and look at it and go, all right, I should not bring in this extra force that I had planned and let them fight this shit out, Thoughts on that?
I think that it's on the GM that if they are going to up the difficulty, if all of a sudden the climb becomes much steeper, they need to give some forewarning. Oh, we intercepted some sort of communications. There's reinforcements inbound. Oh, our long range probes are coming up. They're getting pinged. There's some sort of force inbound, because for players to be involved, they have to feel like the game is fair.
Right.
And if you start doing things unilaterally as a GM, like, oh man, I really want to win, or I want to throw this curveball, it needs to have some sort of hint that it's coming. It needs to feel fair, or you're just going to end up disenfranchising your players.
Yeah, I think we've kind of gone deeper on kind of the GM based, campaign based scenarios, and I think you can have like real, even like emotional swings within one scenario, but you got to bring it back to where they have an enjoyable time and it's still achievable. The objective is still achievable. So like, this force appears out of nowhere and you're outgunned and outmatched, but then all of a sudden you get like, friendly artillery bombing or hitting these forces, something that rebalances it so that the objective is always achievable by the end of the scenario. So I think that's an important thing to consider.
Okay. John, you had a note about a wargame blog that you enjoy. You want to expand on that?
Sure. So I'm a historical wargamer. Colorado actually has a really good historical wargaming scene. They're called the Colorado Military Historians. And it's just a passion of mine, naval wargaming and World War II wargaming, my particular interests. And this one blog is called The Tactical Painter. I believe he's out of Australia, and he plays a game system called Chain of Command. It's World War II, platoon based. So basically, the player is a platoon leader. He has 3 to 4 squads that he's trying to achieve victory in any given scenario. And these reports that he puts up are really well done, high production value, good photos. He goes into both players' kind of train of thought, examining wind conditions and preservation of forces. And, while that's very interesting to me historically, it's also very much so applicable to Battletech, because you have those same tension points of I need to maintain my forces so that even if I whiff on this scenario, next scenario, I have a strong enough force that I have a good chance of winning. And I think he really sets a high bar for what you should look to achieve when you are running a campaign and also producing battle reports. You want good photos. You want to explain players, thoughts, and it's just all around a very, very high production value thing that I enjoy reading. And I would love to see Battletech take on, someone kind of pick up that banner and march forward on the Battletech front. And with Matt's talk about running scenarios out of Hobbytown, maybe he and I can do that, as a hope of mine personally. I'd really love to get some nice battle reports. Everyone loves reading them and seeing the pictures, and it is telling a story. And just like watching a movie or reading a book, you start getting invested in these characters. And you're like, oh man, are they going to be able to pull it off or not? You know, and that I would love to see that in BattleTech. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to, develop scenarios for BattleTech, for Total Warfare, for Alpha Strike, whatever you want to call it. I don't give a shit at this point. Um, you know, and you've really got to expand your horizons on as a person that develops scenarios. Like, what do you want to get your players to do, kind of thing? What do you want to make them enjoy, kind of thing? And I think you've got to expand those horizons outside of sometimes the BattleTech universe and look at different stuff like your historical wargaming thing. So I think that's a fantastic option to look at.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear today. Obviously, it's a consensual contract that the GM wants that, and the player also wants that. Because if one doesn't, then you're just not going to get there.
Yeah, and that's I think we've all experienced that at some point with a GM that we don't know, where you might end up with a GM that wants to win all the time, and that really doesn't bode well for a group. And you've really got to look at what's best for the group. If you want to keep your group engaged and playing on a regular basis and something you enjoy, you've got to kind of, as a GM, look at I may need to lower what I want to do and base it off of their expectations, kind of thing. Kind of manage expectations.
No, absolutely. There's a tension between the story you want to tell as a GM and the story that your players want to be told as players.
Absolutely. Anybody else got anything on that? Nothing heard. All right. Moving on. We've covered the main course of the episode. All right, and John, you're getting ready to be up here, buddy. All right, the next thing.
It's lore time.
It's lore time, brother. It's lore time.
It's lore time. All right. So, just imagine this: the year is 3151. Your hyperpulse generator doesn't work, and you don't know how to read. But all of a sudden, you just get into a crayon-drawn picture that shows that the wolves have conquered Earth. And you're wondering, but what about the other clan, Clan Jade Falcon, the greatest clan of them all?
Alert!
Yeah, right. So today we're going to be talking about the Jade Falcons and where they're at as of the Ilk Clan era. And again, spoiler alert, they lose. Melvina Hazen is dead. And there's only 200 Jade Falcons left on Earth. And Alec Ward says, guess what? You're going to be my new Black Watch. I hope you like it. What's that mean for the Jade Falcon occupation zone? Well, it ends up...
Hope you got Tamar Rising open.
That's right. I hope you have Tamar Rising open. It ends up that the Jade Falcons that remain in the occupation zone split into 3 separate entities. You have the Alina Mercantile League. They call themselves the Jade Falcons. And then a abortive state that is absorbed by the Hell Horses almost immediately. They don't have a very long life, sadly. So the 2 key players are the...
And what is also this Malthus Confederation? Because isn't Malthus a Jade Falcon name? Blood name?
It is, but in the Inner Sphere, it's associated with a criminal element. We don't really like to talk about it. It's kind of a stain on the name.
Of course.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm offended
Falcons.
you would even bring it up. It's kind of outrageous. But
it's on the map.
Oh my god, fucking Jade Falcons, man.
Yeah. Well, the Jade Falcons are the Yankees of bad guys. I like to say.
Oh,
you just hate to see them win, really.
Anyway.
Anyway, you end up with 2 states. You end up with the Alina Mercantile League and the Jade Falcons based out of Sudantan. Sudantan? I don't know. Under G.E. Christie. Chistu. G.E. Chistu. Oh my gosh. The two have a brief communication. Alina Mercantile League being headed by the Merchant Factor, and G. Christu obviously being the Warrior Cast. It's very short talks. It's to the extent of, oh, you're not run by the Warrior Cast, then you're wrong, and that's about it. It is interesting though. The Alina's Mercantile League have access to some very kind of unique mix of units. They hire a lot of mercs, which is, usually considered Desgrub by the clanners. And then you have the more traditional side led by Chistu. But because of circumstances out of their control, both are forced to kind of adapt to the difficulties of the time. They don't have a very reliable source of recruits or machinery. So they kind of they really scratch things together to get by, and you end up with some very tenacious kind of they're still clans, but for clans unorthodox organizations, and it's a lot of fun. If you can get invested in some minor players that you're okay with, that maybe in 20 years they get absorbed by some great power or some house, I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just finished reading literally last night, today, Tomorrow Rising, and yeah, it's the entire occupation zone just turns into a whole bunch of small nations.
Yeah.
With 4 to 8 planets each, and it makes sense. There's literally no one left there to defend it. A lot of the Salama warriors didn't even want to defend it. Some of them even turned it into their own, little black market crime world where they were running everything. But yeah, the entire occupation zone has been carved out by a whole bunch of aspiring individuals.
Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, definitely recommend giving Tomorrow Rising, if you haven't already, a read. I know I'm way behind, having just read it, and it's been out for a hot minute. But it's a really good read.
yeah, and I think you really have to look at, if you want to see the current. And I didn't listen to anything John said because he's a Jane Falcon, and I don't give a shit what he says anymore.
That's right.
But if you haven't looked at A Question of Survival yet, did you talk about that at all, John?
I didn't. Is A Question of Survival about the Wolf Dragoons?
No, it is not. It is about
that was Redemption.
That was
Rights.
Redemption Rights, brother. Question of Survival is talking about Ghost Bears and Jade Falcons and what Jade Falcons do in response to Terra. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I would highly encourage you to check that out. I'm about 3/4 of the way through reading that damn thing. I say damn thing because we all know my proclivities are not with the Jade Falcons. So
that's right. This isn't even in your quadrant of space. This is Three Worlds League, Lyrans.
Yeah.
What are these?
I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. So
yeah.
Question of Survival talks about G.U. Chistu and what he does in response to the loss of contact with Malvine Hazen. So definitely check that out and see what happens.
It is on the Christmas list, so shush.
Get on it. Get on it.
Yeah. And celebrate too. You still get to be a bad guy as a Jade Falcon, but you get to stop being psychopathically bad underneath Malvina Hazen.
That's true. And I am pulling for. I am now that the whole Hour of the Wolf thing and Tomorrow Rising and everything we've established that Malvina Hazen is not an entity anymore. So
right.
I do, as a possible closet Jade Falcon, I am pulling for the rebirth of the Jade Falcons in the new Ill Clan era.
Yeah. Well, if the Wolves were able to be absorbed by the Falcons and then create their own clan again, the Jade Falcons deserve it too, right?
Absolutely. I think the Jade Falcons should be able to pull it off. I haven't gotten to the end of A Question of Survival yet. That's more of lackadaisical on my part. But I think if there was a faction out there that I was interested in, that seeing their change in the Intersphere or change as a philosophy, it would be the Jade Falcons kind of thing. So, has nothing to do with me and you's conflict, John.
Yeah, well, we got to talk about that at some point, don't we?
We do. We'll talk about it here at the end when we talk about the news from the neighborhood. So we'll get into that. All right. So that was kind of our lore segment, I think. Anybody else got any comments on that?
I'm just interested in seeing and reading that book and finding out more about it, because even as they say in Tamar Rising, if something were to happen to the self-proclaimed Khan Ji Chitsu, that segment, Splinter, Jade Falcon, tiny little empire of 4 worlds would probably collapse. So I'm interested in seeing how that molds and how they deal with how surrounded they are and how small they are. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in that regard.
All right. Matt, you got anything?
No, I'm pretty far behind as far as lore goes. So I've got I was just looking at my shelf. I've got the Ill Clan and Tomorrow Rising still to yet be read, and I haven't even gotten into any of the Ill Clan actual fiction. So I am ways behind, but I'm really excited to get more into it. I've recently.
So every episode, spoiler alert for Matt.
I mean,
sorry.
It's like anytime I get on anything related to Battletech, it's all spoiler. But
as much government travel you do, you can't just open a book. Come on, man.
I know. I go like comatose in airplanes, so it's kind of hard. But I really even when the surprise is spoiled, I still like to read all the nitty gritty details and how things happen. So I'm really excited, just to see how things keep changing and keep adding to the lore. So excitement all around.
All right.
This might be I may have made a mistake here, but Matt, I never got to read. You have painted Intersphere and painted clan forces. But what are your favorite factions? Where do you lie? Where do your loyalties lie?
My favorite, I'm okay with either side. They each have their pros and cons.
You're pan-factional.
I am pan-factional as well. Yes.
Yes.
But first in Premier Love is the old FedCom. So I'm right in BourBen's corner there. But I guess I kind of swing on the clan side, just a wolf as well. So I'm kind of like the vanilla guy that just walks in and is like, oh, these are the guys that are talked most about. Okay, I'll play with them.
So disappointing.
I know.
So disappointing.
I know. It's true.
Well, and I want to bring up I don't know if this is a new segment or not, but somebody had asked, what is your favorite faction and why is it Fed Sons?
That was Derek.
Absolutely, it was.
He doesn't account after he insulted Miller Lite. I just want to put that out there. All
right. Well, I mean, to be honest, it is just water with bread in it. Let's be fair.
No. It is enhanced water. Okay. Enhanced.
All right. So, I mean, Mike, what is your preferred faction?
For Intersphere, well, as you've seen the photos, all of my IS units are painted up in Kellhounds. One, for simplicity's sake, I don't have to worry about more than one scheme. Just paint them all red and black.
If you had to take a faction, an actual faction, what would you take?
Well, funny you should ask. So the Kellhounds are somewhat kind of like an actual faction now, based off Tamar
come
Rising,
on.
right? Like,
Come on.
No, they only have one
Ah.
planet. Their leader flies a tank. Okay, it doesn't count.
You can't count the 3058 Arc Royal, defense cordon as anything but bullshit.
Uh,
if we were going for, I guess, one of the 5 major houses, I would go Steiner. And then
yeah, it's good.
Clan.
I
das gut.
approve that. I approve that.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Prost.
Wie bitte sehen?
Let's see. Yeah, and then clan-wise, my custom clan is a splinter from the Ghost Bears to make it a little more Nordic, more Norse. But if we were going for named clans, it'd be Ghost Bear.
I'm surprised you weren't more Rasselhag Dominion or even Free Rasselhag Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going off like they come. I mean, yeah, they also get super annihilated
really,
super fast
Sure.
shortly after that poor country was. But I was talking about like the 5 initial.
Free Rasselhag is just an offshoot of Steiner too.
I don't
right?
know, Mike. All I hear is that you bitched out of being a space Viking. God damn.
Spice Viking. Like a Spice Girl, but a vegan. I love it.
But they're neighbors, right? They can be friends. They can play as both
Hello,
sides.
I'm Spice Viking.
we obviously have established what John's preferred faction is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to see a picture of me. You just need to picture, Arrested Development. The character is trying to sound like a chicken.
Oh man, I love it.
That's
Cuckoo.
That's Jade Falcon. Yeah, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Cuckoo.
The inner sphere. Any
What-
inner sphere?
If you had to pick an intersphere, John, what would it be?
The Deutschland, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna go Steiner. Eh?
The Alliance, yeah.
Oh, we're all going to hell for our accents.
Yeah.
Hey, Duolingo says I do just fine. I'll have you know.
Matt, you've thrown around a little bit of the Merrick vibe. What's going on there?
Yeah, for LVO, I decided that because this will be like my first major non-Colorado Wolfnet AS350, I just wanted to see if just a random faction from a random era could hang with the other kind of almost cherry-picked faction era list. So I picked one that I didn't really know much about, but that is kind of like hangs on in the background. So that's why I picked Free Worlds League, and they're purple, so I can make some purple people eaters. And then Civil War is like kind of where most of my lore knowledge kind of ends. So I thought, oh, that's we'll see what it's like. So that's why I picked Free Worlds League. No other reason than kind of I don't know much about it. So it kind of forces me to see what units they have and try and do my best with it.
So is that your preferred faction, or is it
Not at all.
You lean some other way?
Yeah, I mean the first force that I painted up and I play the most is my my FedCom list in Clan Invasion. So that's what I play with the most probably. And that's where I lean in kind of favoring them. But I'm interested to learn a lot more about the other different factions, and FedCom is kind of like gets the most attention, especially in the early lore. So, them and Draconis Combine and kind of the conflict there. But yeah, I wouldn't say that I lean towards Free World League, but I'm excited to see how they hold up against what I foresee as being some much stronger lists.
All right. Oh shit! I have to actually say what my faction is, don't I?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, nerd.
Nerd. Well, I mean, as probably a lot of people know, I'm a diehard Fed Sons guy. So yeah. I'm not quite sure what John's saying right now, but I'm sure it has something to do with Fed Sons. But I've always been a Fed Sons guy from the very beginning. Before the fucking clans were even a thing. So I don't know if that tells you how old I am, but
and Ben, just to clear up, I'm sorry, I said FedCom, but I meant Fed Sons. That was a mistake of mine. But yes, Fed Sons over FedCom, not FedCom.
Sonner.
You don't.
He does have his stuff painted up in the
That's right.
the heavy guards, isn't it?
He's had a few Fed Sons.
Yeah, it's all green and yellow. So yeah, it's only Fed Sons. Sorry about that.
Yes. I knew you and I had a connection at some point, Matt.
Our dice and our love for Fed Sons.
That's Fed Sons is my Intersphere faction, obviously from my avatar on Discord and the tattoo on my arm and everything else. But on the clan side, if I had to choose a clan faction, lore wise, it would probably fuck you, John. It would probably be the Jade Falcons, just because.
That's all we need to hear.
No.
What?
But I lean towards Goliath Scorpions with how they've kind of progressed through the lore era and stuff like that. So I'm more of a.
Also root for the Raiders. You're just a fan of the obscure.
I am. I've always been an underdog rooter kind of thing. Like, rooting for the fucking underdog, like making him, the biggest probably underdog epiphany I ever had was when, Grayson Carlisle going on to Verthandi with his very basic mercenary unit. So it's one of those. I've always been an underdog kind of rooter, and Goliath Scorpions seem to be the underdog in the Oakland era. So I'm trying to see where they go with things.
Don't they become the Goliath Lions or something like that?
Well, they had a split during the Reaving. You had the Stone Lions that were a Goliath Scorpion cluster or galaxy. I don't know. They got left behind in the home worlds, and they kind of got absorbed and then unabsorbed or something from some of the weird shit that happened in the home worlds. But then you had the
whole war of Reaving is kind of like a baby throwing a tantrum. It's like, look at me, I'm relevant.
It's so weird. Like, so many clans got absorbed in the home worlds that nobody even knows about anymore.
Right.
And I know that's something that CGL hasn't really expanded upon yet. Maybe we'll see something. I don't know. But from what the Wars of Reaving sourcebook says, that pretty much the Star Adders came out on top, and you have the Star Adders and the Stone Lions and some weird amalgamation of different bullshit that's going on there. But the Scorpio Imperio, and then the Clan Goliath Scorpion, and then whatever they are in the Oakland area, it's going to be an interesting piece. But so that's kind of where my proclivities lie. Is Fed Sons and kind of Goliath Scorpions.
Okay.
But going back to your Jade Falcon comment there, who's your favorite Jade Falcon?
Oh man,
all the above.
If I had to choose a Jade Falcon that was my favorite, it would probably be Joanna.
That's pretty good.
Joanna,
she's got a chip on her shoulder.
She is an underdog, angry bitch that will not. She doesn't fuck around. She says what she says.
That's what I was about to say. For the fear of misogyny, I was going to be like, "That's one angry bitch right there."
I don't blame her. She's something that if I had to epitomize my personal relationships, that's somebody I'd be interested in.
So you're her Aiden Pride, and she just absolutely hates
you. That's really how my 30-year relationship with my wife is right now. So it works out great. I'm her Aiden Pride, so it works out.
Angry at me when you bust.
That's awesome, Ben.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so now it's time for Brew It Baby with BourBen and the drink of the month.
Woo! BourBen, you're my hero.
Hey all, this is Ben here, your Battletech Master of Spirits. Get your mixers, liquors, shakers, stirs, and strainers ready as we cover this month's Battletech Drink of the Month.
All right, so this month is the AC20. Chandler, Reller, where are you at right now? This is the AC20, all right? 1 ounce of bourbon, half ounce of scotch, half ounce of vodka, 1 teaspoon of brown sugar, mix it all together in a whiskey glass, and then take it to the head. That is the AC20. Right.
My only critique is the brown sugar. Just take that liquor to the face. You know what I mean? Don't be a bitch about it.
I mixed one up right before the show, and I got to say, that is a rough animal right there. It's the honey badger of drinks right there.
How's this one ranking with the PPC varieties that you've been rolling lately?
It was easier to take a PPC to the head. It was a lot more difficult to take the AC20.
Much like it would be difficult to take an AC20 to the face in I don't know, classic or in any point of the game.
This is a crit roll number 12 on the Alpha Strike table. It's pretty rough. I found that the only way to make some of these better. All right, so if you take the AC20 with its 1 ounce of bourbon, half an ounce of scotch, half an ounce of vodka, and a tablespoon of brown sugar. If you take away the scotch, the vodka, and the brown sugar, it's tolerable. So it's just
bourbon like bourbon.
Pure juice.
That's right. You need the pure brown, brothers. The pure brown.
Gosh. I just want everyone to know it's 21:40 on a Sunday, okay? It's only 9:40 p.m. for you civilians. Not even that late. Poor old Ben and I are faded.
Soused.
I started at 5 p.m. just testing. So
who records a podcast?
No
sober,
shit.
Other than Matt.
To be fair, I already switched over to Dirty Met Coolant like 3 hours ago. So you guys are in for whatever it is.
Ew.
When you posted the drink of the months for the past episodes in the Discord.
Damn right I did. Damn right. So that is the drink of the month. Has anybody tried it?
I have not, and I'm scared.
as you should be.
It's an AC20, man. Everyone's scared of those.
Chandler Reller, my brother, the AC20 aficionado. All right. The AC20 is not for the faint of heart.
He has to drink one now.
He definitely should. He definitely should.
He has to drink one now, and he's got to provide comment.
I'm gonna call him out in the speakeasy.
Hey Ben, if you drink, I'll drink a shot of rum with you, okay, buddy? You're not alone.
Hey man, I figure that's what our batch haul is gonna be, which we'll talk about that next.
That's right. We have to look forward to that.
We do. So.
And that's the drink of the month.
That is the drink of the month. All right, news from the neighborhood. So what I've got on the notes. Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. in Fort Collins in Matt's Battletech basement.
Come play.
Come on out and play. They're prepping a scenario. Did you or campaign?
Right now
we're
holding off on the next campaign till the new year. So we're just playing one-offs at the moment, and it's going to be a little bit more sporadic around the holidays, but we'll still try and keep it most Wednesdays. It'll probably be 3 out of the next 4 Wednesdays still. So if you're in town, if you're here, come play with us.
All right. So that's Wednesday nights. I think Randy out in Longmont, they still run Wednesday nights in Longmont at Wizards
No,
something.
what is it? It's got a gold in it. I can't remember what it is.
Gold, man.
Heart
It's been
of
so long since
Gold.
I've been there.
Heart of Gold, I think.
Heart of Gold. Yep. Heart of Gold.
Yeah, Wednesday nights.
On Wednesday nights in Longmont. If you want to go to Longmont, I think Randy starts out there about 6 p.m. So definitely check out Randy in Longmont. What else we got? Friday night. Friday night fights in Hobbytown, Westminster. Starting around 5:30 or 6. We have Alpha Strike and Classic. Usually myself or John or both of us or none of us is always there.
Yeah, I get down there usually every other week. So we usually have some sort of crew down there on most Friday nights.
Let's see what else we got here. Board Fox Games in Grand Junction on Wednesday nights. Nobody's got nothing on that. Fantastic. Petrie's Games every third Saturday at 2 p.m. in Colorado Springs. Mike, that's your area.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have been successful in actually linking up with that crew, but there is a crew that plays every third Saturday at Petrie's. And then I'll take the next one for you, Ben. Gamers Haven just in Colorado Springs on the north side of Colorado Springs just extended their Saturday hours to, I want to say 10 o'clock. So every Saturday at Gamers Haven is their Battletech night from 6 p.m. to close. And that started officially last week, which was on the 19th of November. So that's their new Battletech night. The owner, Rob, is a big Battletech fan, and we're very thankful to have a dedicated Battletech night here in the Springs. So thanks, Rob.
Fantastic. And if any listeners out there have a game night that they run in an area we haven't mentioned, please post it and let us know so that we can broadcast this stuff out there to everyone so that everybody can know about it.
Yeah, you can hit us up either on our email, which is in the show notes on whatever your podcast service is, or you can hit us up on email or our Discord, which that link is also in the show notes of whatever your podcast service is.
And upcoming action. All right, so there's a lot of shit to cover here. So WolfNet Alpha Strike 350 tournament on December 10th in Gamers Haven in Colorado Springs. This is an Alpha Strike tournament that is casual. All right, it's $5 entry fee. I believe Jack the Dominator is running it. Hit him up on the Colorado Discord. In addition to the tournament on the December 10th, there is a batch-all that's going down. So let's talk about that for a second, John.
Is it Bat Chaw or the Chaw?
I'm saying it's a batch-all as a dirty interferer.
Surat.
Yeah.
Desbra. Salama, maybe?
Hey. Let's not get hasty now.
The age. Come on.
That hurts.
That's for you, John.
So with the WolfNet Alpha Strike 350 tournament that's going on the 10th, you will also probably, if you're in attendance, see myself and John playing out a batch-all that John threw out to me as a trial of possession. John, let's talk about that.
That's right. It's really a question of, Ben, what all you can provide to Clan Jade Falcon.
Absolutely nothing.
Too bad.
So John and I are going to be fighting out our own personal trial of possession between John requesting a trial of possession for me as he wants to possess a Fed Center as a Jade Falcon. So we will be fighting out a 200 PV battle value or 200 PV Alpha Strike fight, right?
Are you guys just gonna make it part of the competition down there, like first first game of the day or something?
No, it's definitely going to be a final round type event
Ooh,
where
see.
we're both feeling beleaguered, we're both a little bit beat up, and we're going to dice off for what the scenario is, and then just figure it out.
No. We're not dicing off the scenario. We already established the scenario as part of the trial. You
That's true.
declared what you wanted. You want me to be a Jade Falcon for a year,
Correct.
right? And so I, as the Batchall receiver, got to choose the battlefield, which is going to be stand-up fight in Alpha Strike. Based off the 350 Wolfnet rules, we're going to build our forces and fight it out. And the winner, well, let's say this, the loser of the match will have to be, if I am the loser, I will build and paint and act as a Jade Falcon for an entire year.
Yep.
Or if John is the loser, he has to build and paint a list and compete as a FedSons player.
It's not going to happen. Don't worry about it.
Oh, it will. Oh, it definitely will. Oh, I know it will.
We might have to record this and make it the first video in the Valhalla Club YouTube channel.
We might have to do that. So, if you are looking for some entertainment, even if you don't want to participate or watch the 350 tournament, I would suggest you take a look at, Mike may come up with some magic where he can record some shit and record our game to determine who is going to be a Jade Falcon or a Feds Hunter for an entire freaking year.
I can't wait.
The other options were John was going to dress up as a Jade Falcon in ceremonial garb with feathers and fishnets and shit like that. Whatever they do. So I didn't think that was fair to him. So I just didn't want him to have to show up in fishnets for an entire year because that would kind of put a hurt on my FedSon's heart.
I mean, brother, I've already been in the Navy, Potato.
That's true.
I was about to say it, but you beat me to it.
As a Navy man, he's definitely worn some fishnets every now and then.
Oh man!
So that is the Wolfnet Alpha Strike 350 tournament, December 10th at Gabriel's Havens in Colorado Springs. There's a $5 entry fee. Contact Jack to get in on that.
And anyone coming from the Northman can haul a couple people with me. So just let me know.
Yep, and BourBen's driving down from wherever he's going to be living by then. So if you can hitch up with them. So that is December 10th. We also have the big one, the Las Vegas Open. Come join some of the hosts January 26th through the 29th in Las Vegas. This is an Alpha Strike Classic tournament. Alpha Strike on Friday, Classic on Saturday and Sunday. I know myself, Matt, and Dave are going to be down there.
Yep.
And that's the big Las Vegas, Nevada, not New Mexico.
not Las Vegas, New Mexico. You don't want to go there. Las Vegas, Nevada is where you want to go. If you're going to go to that. What else we got here going on? Genghis Khan in Denver on February 26th. Saturday is going to be a Wolfnet Alpha Strike 350 tournament. There's 24 slots. Make sure you get your slot early. Check the Colorado Discord page for entry status on that.
Also at Genghis Khan on Sunday, there's going to be a classic Battletech Battle Royale. Let's see. Sunday, 4-player campaign raid on Butte Hold. That's not Genghis Khan.
I think it's
pronounced Butthold.
I think that is Genghis Khan as well. I believe Greg from the Colorado Discord is running that. We were testing that out here at Westminster a few times. So
okay. Yeah. Greg is hosting the classic stuff. Dave is putting on the Alpha Strike stuff, but that's at Genghis Khan. They recently had a video. They pushed out on Facebook, where they were listing out like kind of like a hype video in prep for the upcoming con, and of everything mentioned, Battletech was mentioned the most. So even the people that put on the Genghis Con are very excited about the Battletech officially coming to and happening at Genghis Con.
I think it'll be good because I know one of the classic event I mentioned earlier that I was part of down in Westminster was hosted by Greg, and we were testing out some of the Radon Butte hold. Butte, I'll say Butte again because John doesn't understand
It's
how
definitely Butte.
it's definitely Butte. I know John likes to
Sure,
have
it's
his
pronounced
butts.
butt.
Of course it is, Navy guy. So we were testing out some of those scenarios, and I think John or Greg got some good feedback on what he is planning for the scenario at Genghis Khan. So I think it'll be a good game for those classic players that want to get in on it.
And it looks like admission to the individual events, which is either the classic event by Greg or the Wolfnet 350 event hosted by Dave. Those events are free. You just need to buy your event ticket, badge, whatever they want to call it. $66 for the entire weekend and $40 or $45 for a single day badge. And those can be picked up at gamergirlgame.com to get a badge, or is it gamergirlgames?
Gamergirl.game.com.
Oh, okay.
I think, maybe. I don't know.
Let me check.
Somebody look that shit up because I ain't doing it.
It is absolutely gamergirlgames with an S at the end.com.
You show notes lie.
That means Dave typed it wrong.
Son of a biscuit. Well, he's not here. We can badmouth him all we want.
Damn you, Dave.
Dave, you suck. All right, so that is the upcoming events for the next couple of months. Like I said, we got December 10th. We got the...
Oh, there's also... Whoa. The Rocky Mountain Open.
Oh, shit. The Rocky Mountain Oyster Club. What's going on with that?
Let me pull that up.
We actually have like details on it now, because before it was just something is happening. Mike is making internet magic right now.
I'm trying, man. So the Rocky Mountain Open is going to be held in Denver on March 11th and 12th. Venue, as far as I know, is still to be determined, as well as the events to be held. But the same people, Frontline Gaming, that is putting on the Las Vegas Open, is also putting on the Rocky Mountain Open here in Colorado, March 11th and 12th. So that is March. That is all we know at the moment. Its name and its date range. No, and that's it. We don't know the venue. We don't know what's going to be there. But once we know, you'll know. So that's coming up.
And I think that covers our upcoming events for the next couple of months. We'll be hitting those harder as we progress into the new year. All right. I think that brings us to the close of the episode. And we start with the shout outs. Mike, what do you got for shout outs this month?
I'm just going to shout out Braden, Dusty, and Charles, because those are the three individuals I played at the Battle for Black Earth. Again, Dusty, sorry for making that not fun in the first 5 minutes of the game, 5-10 minutes. It was not my intent. But I had a lot of fun playing with all three of those individuals. Charles, you Sly Dog, as the individual that got to know what buildings blow up. Well, you shot it and blew my poor bushwhacker up. But it was a lot of fun. Great games all around, and definitely look forward to more games with all of y'all. So that's my shout outs.
And Matt, shout outs.
Sure. So first shout out, I'm going to duplicate Mike a little bit. Dusty, man, You wiped me out in the third game, and I was sorry I was a bit of a sourpuss, but you completely destroyed me. I did not enjoy it, but you're a great player, man. Love playing against you. Also, for shout out to Damien, because he came up and he was like the first guy that I had talked to that actually listens to us on a good basis. So he was all excited about the podcast, and I was excited to talk to I guess a fan. So Damien, you're always a great guy to talk to. Yeah, if you're listening to this, shout out to you, man. Last shout out is to Aries, because they're awesome. Aries Games and Minis. They help support the events that we do out here, and really help support this latest event, that the Liberation of Black Earth, with some prize support and lots of other things, dice and all sorts of stuff. So shout out to Aries for always being good to us. Yeah.
It just occurred to me that it's kind of ironic. Damien was in charge of the Innersphere commander at the event, had the commander die under his charge, and then won the mech at the end of the event. So like it's kind of ironic, but yeah, Damien's a great player, and always enjoy interacting with him. And Alex did an amazing job painting that. And I'm sorry to tag in at the end of your shout outs here, but shout outs to additional for me, Alex and Jack, for painting the commanders for the event. They both looked amazing, and I'll let you have it back.
I'll just say ditto to that, because they did do a great job, and yeah, great job for those. It's great to have such great players in our community here in Colorado. So those are my shout outs, and I'll turn it over to John.
John, what you got for shout outs?
John's muted.
John?
Did he go to the bathroom?
John!
Caveman.
Boonga.
Bunga.
Unga bunga.
I see how this challenge is going to go down.
Yeah,
he's going to
just
be
gonna
absent for most of
It's going to
it.
be like a ghost. You just...
Uh-huh.
Oh, he's back.
John.
John, shout outs.
I'm here, boys. I quote the Ricky Bobby, I'm too drunk to taste that chicken. You know what I mean?
I don't know what to do with my hands.
And then just
what was the
me
question?
the shout outs, brother. Shout outs.
I pass. I don't know.
Oh, you were going to make a great Jade Falcon opponent.
Might be a bondsman.
You are definitely going to be a great bondsman for the Federated Sons.
Yeah.
All right, shout outs. I'm going to shout out Aries Games and Miniatures again. They did a great job of providing prize support for the Battle of Black Earth event down in Colorado Springs.
Castle Rock.
Whatever, man. It's all the same shit. It's meat, cheese, and vegetables. It's like, Mexican food. It's all the same. Castle Rock, Colorado, Aries Games and Minis, the Battle for Black Earth, Aries Games and Minis. You did a great job. Additionally, just the other contributors to the universe, on the origins of battle mechs, the mechs that a lot of the guys over on YouTube are developing, the Armor Up guys that are running all of the Armor Up podcasts, Wolfnet, Black Pants Legion, Death Ray Designs, all those contributors to the universe. You guys are doing a great job. Keep up your good work, and we all appreciate it. So,
Roger that.
All right, so my shout out tonight goes out to everybody that joined us for Battle of Black Earth. And a big shout out to Jack and Alex for painting the prizes. They turned out amazing, and I know that the folks that took them home are going to really appreciate them, and I can't wait to see them on the table again, as well as to Derek and to Jeremy at Inconceivable Games. You guys made this happen, and I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everybody coming out and, giving their time to an event. And I hope everybody had a great time.
and with that completes this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to you guys listening to us next month. Talk about a lot of nonsense.
We won't be sober for that either.
We weren't sober for this one. What's the difference?
Night all.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us today in the Valhalla Club. Special thanks to our sponsor, Ares Games and Miniatures. Ares is the premier online retailer for all your Battletech needs. You can contact us at thevalhallaclub@outlook.com. If you are in Colorado, please join your local community group on Facebook and Discord. If you are able to help support your local Colorado Battletech community, subscribe on Patreon to Colorado Battletech. This Patreon account is used to supply prize support for local events and assist in venue costs. Links for the Valhalla Club Discord, the Colorado Battletech Patreon, and Facebook group are in the show notes. Until next time, mech fans.